Welcome to Lawyers.ca. This video is designed to help you navigate my website at Lawyers.ca. My name is Stephen Biss. I'm a lawyer in Mississauga, Ontario. At the top left-hand corner of many of my pages, you'll see that I have an exclamation mark. If you place your mouse near the exclamation mark, you'll see that there's a link to my home page, a link to a page about my office location. The page about office location will give you a map of where my office is located. You'll see that I'm located at Hensel Circle, which is a service road for Dundas Street, right in the area of Cawthra Road in Dundas. And on my location page, I have a street view so that you can see what my building looks like. It's this building on the left. And I have directions with respect to how to get there by car and by bus, including information about the bus stops. There are also links to the GO Transit system and to taxi services and other transit services in this area. I've also provided at my location page, at the office location page, information about some of the traffic cameras in the Greater Toronto area. I'm going to go back to home. Menu item about Stephen Biss will take you to a curriculum vitae, some information about how I can help. The curriculum vitae contains information about my education and my background, and some of the activities that I've been involved in over the last few years, as well as information about the courses that I offer for other lawyers. Also at the exclamation mark, you'll find links about pages having to do with booking an appointment at my office, a page talking about how I can help you, what kind of work can I do, a page having to do with methods of fighting criminal cases, and one that a lot of my clients find interesting, which is a page about what's my track record. That's a page that talks about some of the cases that I've done. It's helpful in knowing some of the approaches that can be used in criminal law in defending various cases. The DUI link from my front page contains information about impaired driving in Canada. And some of the most useful information you're going to find at the Canadian Impaired Driving Information page and the Canadian Impaired Driving Checklist and the Canadian Drinking Drivers Worksheet. I'm going to show you each of those in just a moment. But in addition to that, there are links having to do with Ontario's Stream A early reinstatement system. There are also information about a blog having to do with breath instruments in the province of Ontario. A list of breath instruments in Ontario. There's a blood alcohol calculator used by lawyers, and there's a link to my database of information, international information about drinking and driving, specifically having to do with legislation and courthouses in Canada and the United States. But first of all, I want to show you my Canadian Impaired Driving Information page. That page at my website has lots about the various kinds of approaches that can be used in defending a drunk driving charge. There are pages at my website about the option of pleading guilty, whether you can fight an impaired driving charge. And there are lots of pages having to do with the license implications in Ontario of drinking and driving. Links about the specific legislation in the province of Ontario, and a glossary of information of various terminology having to do with DUI and DWI. There are questions and answers to many of the common questions that people have about drinking and driving. Now, if you have a menu at the top of the page that looks like this one, one of the small ones, you can again use the exclamation mark to get to the location page or the curriculum vitae, or you can click on home to get back to my main page. In addition, with respect to drinking and driving, there's a very, very useful page that you'll find called the Canadian Impaired Driving Checklist. The Canadian Impaired Driving Checklist is a form that you can print out on your printer and then fill it out by hand to do a self-interview of a lot of the information that your lawyer, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, that your lawyer can use in interviewing you and understanding what sorts of issues you may be able to raise in your drinking and driving case. Now, when you complete this form, please make sure that you don't show it to anyone other than your own criminal law lawyer. Another important, useful document at my website is something called the Canadian Drinking Drivers Worksheet. The Canadian Drinking Drivers Worksheet is a form that you can use, you can print out, just like the Impaired Driving Checklist. You can print out the Canadian Drinking Drivers Worksheet and use it to interview yourself to make notes of specifically what you were drinking the day or night before and what you were eating the day or night before with each of the drinks and all of the details about the drinks. That's a very, very useful piece of information that you can save. Again, don't show this to anyone other than your own criminal law lawyer. Another area of law that I practice in is specifically youth court law. In youth law, youth court law, juvenile justice, what used to be the Juvenile Delinquents Act, then became the Young Offenders Act, and then became the YCJA, the Youth Criminal Justice Act. I do a lot of work acting for young people, 12 to 17-year-olds who are charged with criminal offenses. And I have a separate video dealing with that. In the criminal law section of my website, I have pages having to do with arrest and going to court, asking for an adjournment, criminal law, and spousal assault. Now, some of the pages having to do with arrest and going to court look like this. And they will give you information very much about tailored towards the Greater Toronto Area courts, and in particular, the Brampton Court. You'll find out information about the Brampton Adult Court and the Brampton Youth Court. Lots of information about what to do if you or a family member have just been arrested. And specifically at Brampton Adult Court, you'll see that there's information about how to be a surety, about first appearance in a Brampton court, what you should wear to court, kind of clothing, and how to contact a lawyer. With these respect to the pages at this part of the site, there are menus up at the top about maps to my office in the Brampton Courthouse, about first attendance at Brampton Court, and how to find a lawyer in the Brampton courthouse system. And I'm going to go back to the main part of my website, which is at Lawyers.ca. Now, at my website, I also have information about wills. Many of my clients, although the major part of my practice does not have to do with wills and estates, I do wills for some of my clients who I've had for a number of years. But there's a lot of information at my website about the making of wills, powers of attorney for property, powers of attorney for personal care, and estates. Now, I have, in addition to Lawyers.ca, a number of other websites that I think that you'll find interesting. The wills-estates.com, www.wills-estates.com, is a very, very useful site if you want to learn a lot about wills and powers of attorney. DefenseCounsel.com is a very, very interesting site having to do with the youth criminal justice system. ImpairedDriving.com has some very highly technical information about the defense of impaired driving cases. Courthouses.net has information about courthouses and the facilities of courthouses, both in Canada and the United States. There's a lot of information about the courthouses in the Greater Toronto Area. DUIDictionary.com is a site that has to do with the words, the terminology, the lingo that we use in the defense of drinking and driving cases. DUIvideos.ca is a site that has a lot of information in it about the kinds of videos that are available from experiments done in drinking and driving cases. And I have some other sites as well that you can feel free to explore. The resources segment of my website has information with links to other sites for the most part. Legal Aid Ontario and its system of providing research for lawyers, a link to the Supreme Court of Canada website, a link to the Ontario Court of Appeal website. Federal bills and federal statutes. Federal bills has to do with current legislation. FStats is a link to the federal statutes of Canada. If, for example, you want a copy of the Criminal Code or you want a copy of the Youth Criminal Justice Act. P-bills is the provincial bills, provincial draft legislation at Queen's Park for the Government of Ontario. P-stats are statutes and regulations for the province of Ontario if you want to do some research and get a copy of a law such as the Highway Traffic Act for the province of Ontario. CLA is a link to the Criminal Lawyers Association of Ontario. If, for example, you're looking for a lawyer in Thunder Bay or in Ottawa, that's a good place to find one. These are the members of the Criminal Lawyers Association. CanLII is another research database. It has a lot of reported cases, and it's free. It's not one of the paid databases. The MAG Court links into the Ministry of the Attorney General website. ON Phone is a list, an easy way for finding phone numbers of Ontario civil servants, particularly those in the Ministry of the Attorney General. Dockets is a portion of the Ministry of the Attorney General site that tells you a lot about what is on the dockets at court for that particular day. You could just use it on that particular day, but if you know a particular courthouse, such as Brampton, you can go in and find a list of all the names on the court docket in Brampton for that day and find out what courtroom they're in. Now, just going back to the main part of my website at Lawyers.ca, you don't have to just use the menu at the top. There's lots of other information at the site, and in particular, there are headings with links for arrest and going to court, a heading having to do with people who want to make a will, another link about accessory equipment and used in over 80 cases, such as simulators and simulator thermometers. There's a link to Greater Toronto Area courthouses. There's a guide to the Brampton courthouse. There's a page about how to ask for an adjournment. That's the most important thing you need to know right off the bat. A page having to do with criminal law and spousal assault. A page that gives you some ideas about what it's going to cost to have a lawyer defend you in criminal court. A page again about character reference letters. That's one of the most popular pages at my website, giving people information about how to write a character reference letter for use in court in Canada. And I'm not giving you a precedent of exactly what it should look like, but this page gives a lot of information about the content, what should go into a good character reference letter that can be used on sentencing in Canada. We don't want letters on sentencing that just are the same as what would be for an employment reference. These are letters having to do with whether or not people are showing remorse, whether they acknowledge they've done something wrong, and what's going on in their lives. And so it's very, very important that letters of this nature be written well. Of course, you only show the letter to your lawyer or to duty counsel. They are not to be just simply handed to the Crown Attorney or to anyone else, because they need to be checked by a lawyer before you use them in court to make sure that they're proper. And at my site, you'll see that I have a page of tips for parents and children related to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. I have a page on interrogations under the Youth Criminal Justice Act and bail under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, criminal records under the Youth Criminal Justice Act.